Welcome in, ladies and gentlemen, to another edition of All Access AM. I am Billy Embody. Thanks for joining us. What a show we have today because, man, the ACC coaching carousel continues to heat up across college basketball. It is outstanding to see the ACC do some of the moves that they're making because that means there's commitment there. There's that level of need to be great. There's that level of commitment to say, hey, we don't necessarily have to be okay with just being okay. And I think we're going to see some major moves here for the North Carolina job, which we'll talk about, of course, but also who knows? NC State might be opening, and that's something we'll talk about and get into on this show. So, two major jobs in the ACC that we're going to focus on today. And I do want to share some thoughts on Hubert Davis, North Carolina, and more. And we'll also touch on SMU opening spring ball this week and some things that caught my eye over there as they got back onto the practice field. So lots to do here on this edition of All Access AM, and appreciate you guys being here and appreciate those of you who've reached out to OPW Solutions, our friends over there that can help you with all of your commercial real estate needs. Give them a call, or excuse me, not commercial real estate needs, but commercial landscaping, power washing, snow and ice control, and more. Give them a call, 214-444-2305, or email them info@opwsolutions.com. Make sure you're up to date on all of the things you and your business can be doing in that space to ensure that your front porch is all clean and tidy, so to speak, as customers roll up and see your business. So they're in North Texas, they're in Oklahoma, they're in Arkansas, and looking forward to a really, really fun 2026 with our friends at OPW Solutions. So Hubert Davis is out as North Carolina head coach, and a decision that finally gets made after another disappointing exit from the NCAA tournament as he just couldn't get it done. And whether it be right or wrong under the circumstances with Caleb Wilson being out or just some of the things that have happened over the last season for Carolina, they made the decision that they want to reinvest and double down in this basketball program before this season, and it did not pan out. Caleb Wilson was a great story. He gets hurt, and then you're kind of listless down the stretch, especially after he ended up getting hurt in practice as he was closing in on a return, and Carolina didn't win another game after that as he hurt his other hand in practice. And, as the 2025-26 season ended with 3 consecutive losses, that was the first time in 56 years. And Carolina's leadership took a long, hard look. And when it's one of your own, it makes it a difficult decision, and it makes it a difficult battle to probably wrestle with internally. But ultimately, they made the decision that the long-term future and growth of this basketball program towards greatness was more important than taking care of one of their own for another year and seeing how it played out, because you're seeing Duke do what Duke does and build the roster that they have and, advancing to the Sweet 16, and we'll see how it goes. And they have injuries and they're advancing. And you see the investment of an NC State to go out and get a big name like Will Wade. So you bring that into the state, but we'll obviously talk about that more in just a moment. But when you see some of the, I think, probably not apathy, like as a program, as a basketball school, because that's not the reason why they're doing this. There's no apathetic feelings towards basketball. But when you looked at Carolina nationally, ever since that national championship, Hubert Davis's first incredible season, you've seen it kind of just fall off into a state of, oh, okay, well, they're doing okay. They're going to make the tournament, but there's no like general great feeling around Carolina. It's kind of similar to what Kansas is probably going through right now with Bill Self in a sense, except Bill Self has an incredible amount of history, incredible run there running the Jayhawks, and more skins on the wall than Hubert Davis. So Carolina makes a move that is going to cost them $5.3 million in buyout money for Hubert Davis. But this is a decision that is not about money. This is a very serious basketball decision to go out and invest in a coach. Like, this reminds me of the moment when Alabama went out and hired Nick Saban all those years ago. They called him at, during the NFL season. He was famously quoted and said that he was, never going to be, not going to be the Alabama head coach and all those things. And Alabama gets close to hiring Rich Rodriguez, and that falls through at the last moment. And then Nick Saban does, in fact, end up being the Alabama head football coach, and the rest is history. And they did it with a record-setting contract, and they did it because they knew that they were tired of being tired with losing. Not to Carolina's, level here, where Carolina's still making the tournament. Like, they're not in shambles. They're not coming off probation and things like that. But with North Carolina, they are very much a team that is still able to win now, because this is basketball. So when you see a job like this open, with all the conversation around what we're having, what we're going to have to do with the Dean Dome, what that looks like in the future, with that type of investment being talked about, with the type of NIL opportunities that that brand presents there in Chapel Hill, with all of the buzz around Bill Belichick and what they're even doing, as a second year coaching staff there. There's a lot of things turning in the direction of there really should be a better result on the court for North Carolina basketball. And that's what it comes down to. And so now they're going to go out and find their next coach. And of course, our friends at Inside Carolina, just the number one site for any Carolina fan, but they've gone out and done a bunch of reporting on this. They've reported that UNC has hired turnkey to assist Bubba Cunningham and the leadership of Carolina to go out and hire a new basketball coach. They've already started working on a transition with Jim Tanner, the general manager in charge there at UNC, as they will run the program and get ready for a transition of a large magnitude. Last season's budget for NIL went up. Well, this year's budget, 26-27, is going to be rumored around 14 million at minimum. And with the fundraising that needs to be able that needs to happen, you have to have excitement around your program still. You can't have that apathy. And that's kind of like what Florida State's battling down there in football. And so with Inside Carolina's reporting, that UNC was going to aim for a $14 million budget for recruiting, that was going to be tough to deal with, or tough to get with Hubert Davis back again. And so ultimately they make the move to move on from him. He was 125-54 overall. He was 68-30 in ACC play. He had 20 wins in each of his 5 seasons, but he's gone and he's moving on. And so now you look at the watch list for North Carolina basketball. They're going to have a who's who across the country on this list. And it's on Bubba Cunningham and this North Carolina leadership to go out and get a deal done and make somebody say no. And I think they're in a make somebody say no type of mentality right now, because you don't do this without having very high expectations and a very high confidence level that you're going to be able to go out and get this done. Because look at what Penn State did with James Franklin, and they ended up with a great fit there with Matt Campbell coming over from Iowa State in football. But it took a minute to get there, and you were thinking, okay, maybe they miscalculated, maybe they misjudged. They were just looking in the wrong places. Carolina knows where they should be looking, I think. You are going to start your list with the Tommy Lloyds, the Dusty Mays, the TJ Osselberger at Iowa State. Brad Stevens is another hot name, the president of the Boston Celtics. How can you get him back in the coaching game? I don't think that's going to be an option. But there's going to be so many different, I think, names thrown around in this, but they're all going to be high-level type of people. And I wonder if we see a coaching carousel kickoff like we kind of saw last year or 2 years ago when SMU hired Andy Enfield, and what it ended up doing to the coaching carousel. But I wonder if this is what was needed. It wasn't necessarily this incredible job market. Well, guess what? Now all of a sudden it is, because Carolina's open. That means another big job is probably going to open. And how can they shake up the market, and how does it impact coaches around the country? I don't know if North Carolina is going to go get one of those coaches that I mentioned, one of those coaches who has a number one seed in the NCAA tournament. Yeah, I don't know if that's going to be able to happen because it's a heavy pull to get those guys out of situations that are already working for them and are already having positive experiences. But at the end of the day, this is North Carolina basketball. You're not gonna play second fiddle to football like you are at a Michigan, like you kind of, and I don't know the particulars around Arizona, but I don't know. They're still trying to do football at a high level. So how do you battle that? But you're going to be coming to the school, one of the schools that is just in the Power Four conferences, the high major basketball, so committed to basketball while still having football at that level and in the ACC and in the conference. So I think Carolina is going to have a pretty strong pool of coaching talent that's going to be interested. I'm just so intrigued to see who they come away with because I do feel like they're going to reset the market as far as coaching contracts here. This is a very easy uh, contract to present to somebody. It's, hey, this is a blank check. What do you need? And we're going to make a program changing hire. And we're going to put Carolina basketball back on top. Like this feels like the moment when Miami went out and said, we're going to be great again in football and we're going to tap Mario Cristobal to do it. And they went out and brought him to Coral Gables. We know about the fit. We know about how all of that panned out. A national championship game appearance. It was a long build. Basketball, you can move quicker. There's no question about it. And if you hire the right guy and give them the right resources, they can be right back in there and making a move that'll change the ACC forever in this new kind of era, right? We know what Carolina has been in the past, but in this new era of NIL, in this new era of roster building and team building, how do you make sure it is elite every single year like a Duke is doing? There's your example now, unfortunately for Carolina, but that is right down the road. That's your rival. That's who you compete against 365 days a year. And you hope that on the other side of that competition, you're hoisting a national championship trophy because that is exactly the goal that each of those programs have every single year. That's the expectation, is to compete for national championships, not to make the tournament and flame out in the first round. So when you establish that type of a level of goals and demand that type of excellence, it's so important. And Pony from Tampa chimes in. He said, "Good to see UNC spreading their wings and searching outside the tree." I agree. I mean, this is that moment where they have the opportunity to go out and change the narrative around their program. It reminds me in a sense of when Michigan does head coaching searches in the past and they say, "Oh, we need a Michigan man. We need a Michigan man." Okay, well, that's great, but why? Like what in particular has made that such a thing? And I know there's history. I know there's all of those things, but you can go and grab an incredible coach who's going to be there for a long, long time and make this career altering decision for whoever it is, and they'll become your guy. They'll become a part of your tree. And I think that's so important, that because people want to hang on to the Dean Smith days and they want to hang on to the nostalgia of all of that. But when Roy Williams got done and they quickly moved to Hubert Davis, it worked out quickly, with the national championship, but it wasn't a real coaching search in a sense. And that's difficult, right? Like that's not necessarily how most places would operate. And especially in today's age of again, NIL, rev share, roster building, all the things you have to manage, which basketball for the most part has kind of been toiling with for years and just different variations before NIL became official. But man, it's just a different world now. And it's you almost have to have a keen business sense while also being able to run a program and a team and know the coaching side of it. These coaches that do it at a high level, I mean, they're worth every penny. They're worth every penny of exposure that they give to you and your university, sorry. And they will do things that will forever change the landscape of your university, even at Carolina. And that's the opportunity that they have here, is to make a game-changing hire. And I think they'll do it. I don't know who it's going to be, but you don't do this with the confidence without the confidence that it's going to be great and it's going to change your program. And if it doesn't work out and somebody doesn't fit the way they did at their previous spot and have the success that they did, well, at least you've reset the market and you're committed and you've revitalized a fan base to get you going and get you moving in the right direction. So I'm going to be fascinated to see how it plays out. Speaking of our fascination, I mean, I'm always fascinated with the coaching carousel and some of the moves we don't always hear about all of the time, and I think that's something that might be brewing at NC State. But also, I'm fascinated by all the people that continue to support our friends at the La La Land Foundation. The La La Land Foundation is all about normalizing kindness. That's their mission. That's what they do. They continue to find ways to invest in this country's next generation and making them a priority when others might not. And so there's plenty of ways to get involved with the La La Land Foundation. You can do that monetarily. You can make a donation on their website. You can go to lalalandfoundation.com, click the link below in our podcast description to do that. You can do in-kind donations and help these young people transition from the foster care system to adulthood. You can donate gift cards and be a part of their journey. You can do corporate sponsorships. You can volunteer your time. There's all sorts of ways to get involved, and we hope that you guys do that with our friends at the La La Land Foundation. So make sure you do that. Check them out. Just see what they're all about. I mean, they're great supporters of us, and we really appreciate all they do for All Access AM as we are here Monday, Wednesday, Thursday, 8 to 9 a.m. Central Time. I tell you, I had to take a phone call. That's why we were late this morning. And then, of course, camera was getting it all set up again, and it just did not want to cooperate. It not that you guys are probably hating this thought, but was not focused on me. So you would have just had a blurry image, which might have saved some of you guys maybe from wrecking out if you came across my face on the internet. But nonetheless, we are here 8 to 9 a.m. Central Time, Monday, Wednesday, Thursday, covering the ACC and covering the conference as best we can as a whole, and trying to give a little morsel of attention to everybody so that you come away from this podcast feeling like, okay, all right, I caught up on the latest news and what's going on in the ACC. And so trying to do that, trying to keep you guys in the loop. And if that continues to happen, I'll be thrilled. So please hit that subscribe button, help us out, help us grow the channel. We'd love to see it take that next step. So appreciate you guys who have done that already. We will get to Will Wade in just a second, because I'm just so intrigued to see how this plays out with him and NC State. But let's go to SMU real quick here, and we'll break up the football. We'll break up the we'll break up the basketball conversation with a quick little football break here in the middle. And this episode's going to be a little bit shorter. We've got some things as a program to go take care of this morning. It's been a busy one, but when you look at SMU, I look at a program that enters this spring practice with not enough buzz that's being paid attention to it, in a sense. Like, I don't mean the odds. I don't mean where they're at as far as trying to rank ACC championship contenders and things like that, but just nationally, I think you look around the ACC, and I think everybody should be talking about what's going on in Miami. There's no question about that. I mean, just look at what they did last year. They took Darian Mensah on top of that. They took Cooper Barkate from Duke. They're doing all the things that they need to do to be really successful in the long term and continue to have the success that they've had on the field in Coral Gables and take it to the next level and aim to go win a national championship. But SMU opened spring practice on Tuesday, and they've done a good job of having some national folks roll through. I think Andrea Adelson is coming back for spring ball soon, and she was either by or is talked with Rhett Lashley a number of times in the past. So that's something that's going to be happening. I'm sure they'll have some notes on the ACC football podcast, so check that out. But you've also seen a Heather Dinich put out that there's just a lot of conversation around SMU having the confidence that they're going to be a really strong football team in 2026. And I asked Rhett Lashley about that. And for those of you who don't know or don't watch this show all the time. I cover SMU on the ponyexpress.com is where you can find our work on the On Three Rivals network. And we wanted to start an ACC podcast as a part of our coverage so that our followers can have a better feel for the ACC and have it in a relatively digestible form in an hour, 3 times a week, which is how we're here. But Rhett Lashley and I have a good relationship. It goes back a while since he was offense coordinator at SMU the first time around under Sonny Dykes. And as you watch Rhett Lashley, and if you spend a lot of time around him, you kind of know when he's feeling a certain way about his team. And every year I've learned a little bit more about Rhett Lashley and how he ticks and all of his priorities and the way he has different boxes he wants to check on building SMU's program. And before last season, he sat there in the Star, which is right up the road from SMU. They were doing a special practice at the Cowboys headquarters. And he basically kind of shot down any buzz around his team. He said, look, we have to get a lot better. There's this, there's that. And he really felt like they would get better late in the season. And to his credit, they did. They beat Miami, they beat Louisville, they did those things, and then they faltered and did things that normal SMU teams haven't done in the past, which sunk their ship. So he was bang on with saying, look, we're going to take time to develop and be the team that we want to be. And I still kind of sat there and was like, yes, but you should also be able to beat a Baylor, a TCU. Thought SMU was still a better program as a whole. Those things didn't work out. They lost both in kind of one possession style games. TCU got one late, but Baylor was in overtime, a collapse. And going into those, I still thought, okay, SMU, like with Kevin Jennings back and some of the weapons they have and the, playing those games, Baylor at home and the last TCU one, I thought they'll find a way. At worst, they'll be 1-1 and we'll know that they have a decent team. And Rhett Lashley was right. They took longer to develop as a team last year. This year, he's ringing the bell of confidence. And I think it derives from having Kevin Jennings back. But he also said, when I asked him, because I said, hey, I'm kind of feeling you're feeling confident here. And he pointed to a lot of the faces in his program that he's brought in. And he's focused on the people that from the transfer portal they brought in, the coaching staff that they have together, that they have what it takes to put this program in the right direction. And this 2026 season to be a special one. Like he just looked around practice on day one in particular and said, man, we don't really have many holes. And, I like where things are going and this could be something special. And he kind of, said confidence is the perfect word to kind of describe where his head is at with the program. And I think that meant a lot and it said a lot. So I think as SMU opens spring, if you're an ACC fan listening to this, keep an eye on them. Third-year quarterback Kevin Jennings is a starter. He's now a fifth-year senior. Third year as a starter. You look around and there's Lincoln Kienholz coming into Louisville. There's FSU breaking in a new starting quarterback. You're going to have some new quarterbacks all over SMU's schedule this year. And SMU will have Kevin Jennings back. Big deal there. And I just think they're a program that probably deserves a little bit more national attention for how good they've been consistently. There's questions around Clemson. There's questions around what James Franklin's going to do in year one at Virginia Tech. There's questions with FSU. Is Mike Norvell going to be back? We haven't even talked about North Carolina football. But SMU, there's so much consistency in what they do there that they're going to be competitive in every single game. They're going to be a team that should be challenging once again for a spot in Charlotte, especially if they got off to a good start this year, and in turn, be in the college football playoff discussion throughout the year. That's where I think SMU's in-season buzz has to change, and it has to start with spring ball and how that all starts to get rolling. Because if you get those wins against FSU and Louisville early, you're going to enter for the really first time in Rhett Lashley's tenure. You're going to enter October undefeated. That buzz can build. You can then still maybe find a way to play well and win games. And then you're setting up a trip up to South Bend, Indiana in an incredible scene in what should be a college football playoff, almost play-in type of game up there in South Bend, as SMU will head up there late in the season. So I know this was a spring ball conversation. I just think my overall takeaways on SMU were that they were absolutely bigger in the trenches than they've been. And that's not just from a starter perspective. They went out and they acquired freshmen that have the size to at least look the part and get off the bus. And I think that's a big change. It's the biggest change I've seen in the program since I've started covering it. The size on the offensive line was apparent. Size on the defensive line, including the depth, was apparent. And then they go out and they add a couple of receivers to fill some holes. They bring in some talented freshmen. I just think they're going to be in a really strong place from a roster building perspective going forward because that work has already been put in. So I'm fascinated to watch how it all plays out with SMU in spring and the position battles that we see play out and all of those things. But they are just working in the right direction here, and quietly just keep an eye on them. They've got some talent over there at SMU, and they've got a path to making a statement this year if they can take advantage of it. Let's close with this. Again, a little shorter show. I've just, unfortunately, just a busy morning, just one of those. But Will Wade and LSU and NC State's response and how this is all going to play out. I think this is going to be, let's set the stage here. Will Wade goes to NC State. We know what he's brought them to, the NCAA tournament, got him in the first four, and then they exited. They lost to Texas. And ever since then, the buzz has started to build around Will Wade returning to LSU. And LSU's job is not open. Matt McMahon has not been fired. But with that comes those relationships that Will Wade already has in Baton Rouge, including some of the new leadership that is up there. And the crazy thing is, in 6 days from now, his buyout drops to $3 million. And as LSU looks for potentially an off-ramp with Matt McMahon, there's only one thing LSU fans want, and that's Will Wade back. And I covered Will Wade at LSU, brought them success. People loved him. He revitalized that basketball program. And I would argue, out of all the programs across the country, you cannot find one, especially at the high levels there of the brand names, that does more for its own when you're hot in particular than LSU. Like, from football to baseball to Kim Mulkey in women's basketball to gymnastics. I mean, to men's basketball, when it's hot, the PMAC's rolling, it's a packed audience. And Will Wade knows that. And he knew that he had the tools at LSU to succeed. And I'm picking up the sense that he doesn't necessarily have the support at NC State right now. I think NC State has a lot to offer as a whole, but I don't think they have all the tools to succeed in this new era. We just talked about on the front side of this podcast the level of commitment that North Carolina is going to replace Hubert Davis and what they're aiming to replace him with. And to see NC State kind of go through what they went through in year one of Will Wade, kind of set the table. And then hearing some of the buzz around, LSU side of, hey, we're going to make this super easy for you. We're going to have, Nike do this and we're going to do that and blah, blah, blah. This is a job that Will Wade is very familiar with. And look, he said, a lot of things as they got done with that loss to Texas in the first four. But at the end of the day, Will is somebody who really is where his feet are in a sense, but it does get the feeling that this is picking up in a way that is trending towards a return, or he is using it all as a bargaining chip to get more resources in Raleigh because he needs them. And it's not where I think he was kind of led to maybe believe they would be right off the bat, because NIL is different. it is a challenge. It is a challenge to get things working in the right direction. It's a challenge to put things in place that, um, will ultimately lead you to success in that space. And that's everywhere. That's everywhere around the country. And I just think as you watch that unfold with either Will Wade if he stays there or if he leaves, how do you get that fan base to turn to the next level and turn it up a notch? Because it has to happen. For them to take that next step, it has to happen. So I'm intrigued to see how this all plays out with Will Wade. It would not shock me at all if he left North Carolina State for LSU. I think he's familiar with LSU. I think he feels comfortable at LSU. And he knows that whenever he's there, if he's there, he can have the resources to succeed in this new era at a very high level. I mean, LSU is one of those schools that just has it. And they have the ability to do it. They have the ability to say to any coach, just look at what they did with Lane Kiffin. Hey, we're going to do X, Y, and Z, and we're actually going to do X, Y, and Z. And that's from the backing with Nike. That's the donors. That's how things work in Louisiana. Will Wade knows that. And he knows when it's going to shoot. He already knows where he's going to have dinner the first night, I'm sure, if he goes back. Big qualifier. But the buzz is picking up around Will Wade and LSU. I did not necessarily think, just the way coaching carousel plays out, that we would be at this point this far removed from the season. But here we are. It's starting to pick up 6 days away from April 1st when his buyout drops. And Will Wade be the head coach still at North Carolina State? I'm just so intrigued to see if that happens. But we'll be following it for you guys here at All Access AM. I appreciate all of you guys who follow us on the show, and really appreciate all the people who have subscribed to us and helped us grow and all of those things. A little bit of a shorter show today, but we'll be back Thursday. I think we've got to do a pre-recorded show if we do that, or we've got to run it on Friday. So we'll just kind of let you guys know how all that goes. But we will probably be just kind of more, I think, about maybe Friday. I don't know. We'll have to play it by ear, but I have an appointment tomorrow during our scheduled show time. So we've got to figure things out there. But hope you guys enjoyed this edition of All Access AM. A little shorter. Let me know the feedback on 30 minutes, because I always wonder, do we end up doing something like, 3 1 hour shows, or do we go 30 minutes, and do we do more of as far as digestible episodes? Like, let me know your thoughts on this, and we'll see how it goes. So thanks for listening to this edition of All Access AM. For those of you on YouTube and Twitter, really appreciate you following. Big show today. So thanks so much for being here, everybody. It means a lot. Give us the feedback on everything, and we'll catch you next time on another edition of All Access AM. I'm Billy Embody. Thanks for watching.